Welcome to Downtown Sports. My name is Downtown Stephen Brown, and in today's video, guys, is Frederik Andersen playing injured or not? I used this table in my previous video when discussing Frederik Andersen, and I have since updated it then to reflect the most current numbers. We went through the identity of goalie A, goalie B, goalie C, and goalie D. One of these goalies is Jonathan Bernier. Another one of them is Frederik Andersen. When you find out which one is Bernier and which one is Andersen, you might feel very, very sad for a minute. Oh, but Steven, Frederik Andersen plays all these games. Oh, but Steven, he's playing hurt. This is a sample of almost 2 years, not the last 2 months. Goalie A is Antti Ranta, goalie B is Linus Ullmark, goalie C is Jonathan Bernier, and goalie D is Frederik Andersen. And since the start of the 1920 season, there have been 66 goalies that have played a minimum of 1,000 minutes. Frederik Andersen, in terms of all situation save percentage, ranks 41st in terms of high danger shots against per 60. So the volume of high danger shots that Frederik Andersen faces, there have been 38 goalies who have faced more in the last year and a half. High danger save percentage, 53rd. Medium danger shots against per 60. So the same thing. 41 other goalies who have faced a higher volume of medium danger shots against. And if you want to know what constitutes as a high danger shot against, it's about 6 feet in front of the net. A medium danger from about the top of the circle area. Goals saved above average per 60, 43rd. Goals saved above expectation, 56th. There are supposed to be 31 starting goalies in the National Hockey League, and Frederik Andersen is not top 31 in any of those stats in the last year and a half. This is not from the last 2 months where he's possibly been playing injured. This is from the last 2 seasons. With Frederik Andersen not being in the top half in any of these major stat categories, you could round up all 66 of these goalies into a circle and throw a dart into the center of it and have a chance of hitting a goalie who has had better numbers than Frederik Andersen over the last year and a half. So I don't believe for a second that there was nobody else who could have played goalie for the Toronto Maple Leafs while this guy's been playing injured for the last 2 months. Jack Campbell went down with injury on January the 24th against the Calgary Flames. Matthew Tkachuk, people, this is the person that you have to thank for this. The Maple Leafs couldn't find someone else between January 24th and now to play net for them. It was really an injured Frederik Andersen or Michael Hutchison. I looked at the waiver wire from January 24th until now. There's been one goalie that the Maple Leafs could have had an opportunity to put a claim in on, and that was on March the 1st, and it was Alex Stalock, and the Edmonton Oilers ended up scooping him up. Because if we look at last year's standings, the Edmonton Oilers are ahead of the Toronto Maple Leafs in the waiver wire, which means it went Toronto, and they said pass, and then it went Edmonton, and they took him. And I'm getting kind of angry, and I shouldn't be, or maybe I'm frustrated. I don't mean to bully or pile on top of Frederik Andersen. I loved the guy when he first got here. Should have been nominated for the Vezina Trophy in the 16-17 season, for God's sakes, because of how damn good he was. Okay? I'm a Toronto Blue Jays fan. I am a Toronto Blue Jays fan. I absolutely love Jose Bautista. Jose Bautista, in his final season as a Toronto Blue Jay, sucked. I knew it. Every single Jays fan knew it, but they didn't care. You know why? Because the team sucked around him, and they loved him. The Toronto Maple Leafs, the team around them has a chance to do something very special this season. Okay? We can't let our love for Frederik Andersen, because believe me, I love him, and I hate having to say these things about him. We can't let our love get in the way of the opportunity that we have in front of us. All the Toronto Maple Leafs have to do to be 8 wins away from the Stanley Cup, to be 4 wins away from the Cup Finals, is be the best team in Canada. But just for fun here, let's look at Alex Stalock and Frederik Andersen's numbers side by side. Now, Stalock hasn't played a game yet this season, and that might be concerning. But looking at their 1920 seasons, I mean, Alex Stalock, not very good, but Frederik Andersen, not too much better. You know what? This looks a little bit weird. I don't know what's wrong with this. Is this? Oh, I know what it is. This isn't evolvinghockey.com. This is Photoshop, and they're both Frederik Andersen. The actual numbers for Alex Daylock in the 1920 season, not very pretty, but again, fairly comparable to Frederik Andersen. So I don't know how far off my throwing a dart into a crowd of goalies statement really was. Obviously, the glaring difference between the two is that one of them makes $5 million and the other nowhere near that. And I'll say it again, not just the last 2 months, this is the last 2 seasons. There are 51 days between now and the end of the NHL regular season. There are 26 days, remember that number, 26, between the trade deadline and the end of the season. The expected or the probable starter for Saturday's game against the Calgary Flames is Jack Campbell. And if that is true, and Jack Campbell does start that game, and he is healthy and back and ready to contribute to this lineup, that could be huge for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Because I will admit, a goaltending tandem of Jack Campbell and Michael Hutchison does not sound very sexy. But whether you want to admit it or not, the games between now and the end of the season don't really matter that much. They do, but they also kind of don't. The Toronto Maple Leafs are currently 8 points up on the Vancouver Canucks with 3 games in hand and 9 points up on the Calgary Flames. So let me just kind of talk this next point out here. If Frederik Andersen only plays a couple of games between now and the trade deadline, and then none at all from the trade deadline until the end of the regular season, I don't think it's going to hurt the Maple Leafs very much. Don't worry, I have a point. I will get to it. Just stick with me here for another minute or so. We've shown his numbers. Injured or not, they're not very good. And if he continues to play games and he is injured, it's only going to make that injury worse. For himself, for the team, for the longevity of his career. I mean, the guy's a free agent this summer. But again, the sample of the numbers that I've been showing in this video, the video that I made earlier in the week, the video that I made at the beginning of the season, and the video that I made in the off season are not from the last 2 months. They're from the last 2 years. And you might be sitting there thinking to yourself, Steven, are you suggesting the Toronto Maple Leafs put Frederik Andersen on long-term injury reserve right before the trade deadline and have him sit out an entire month and not play any games and then come back cold for the start of the playoffs? You must be crazy. What have we been doing here the last 2 weeks? We've been talking a lot about trades. Oh, Maple Leafs can get this guy. They could get that guy. Matthias Ekholm, Philip Forsberg, Victor Arvidsson, Mikael Granlund, Eric Stahl, David Savard, Taylor Hall. The reality of the situation is that the Toronto Maple Leafs have no cap space whatsoever to make any trades. And a lot of people will just stroll down to the comments section and would be like, well, it's simple. Just trade Nylander. Oh, I could just throw John Tavares on waivers. No, seriously. Gotten those comments in the last 2 weeks or so. No, but for real, some people are like Alex Kerfoot, Pierre Engvall. I mean, Pierre, $1.25 million. Getting that off the books is not giving you enough cap space to go out and acquire any of the players that we mentioned in the previous clip. Even if the Maple Leafs were to get 50% retained on the player that they were acquiring and taking into account the prorated salaries at the deadline. Then in the video I talked about, I said, well, why not trade Frederik Andersen? You could maybe target this guy, that guy, or the other guy. That's where goalie A through D came from. What if the Maple Leafs don't have to trade this guy? And they can still make the upgrades. It reads, when a player has an injury of which they are expected to miss a minimum of 10 NHL games in 24 days in the NHL season, the team can place them on long-term injured reserve, LTIR. LTIR can be used to exceed the salary cap. LTIR is a very complicated aspect of NHL operations, and the vast majority of details are not specified in the CBA. LTIR is what the Tampa Bay Lightning are using to be $11 million over the salary cap by the time the playoffs start. Did I say 11? I'm sorry, only 9.5. Wow, criminal. Nikita Kucherov is recovering from hip surgery. And a lot of people have called into the question the timetable of things and how conveniently they line up here. But they say that he's expected to be back game 1 or game 2 of the first round of the playoffs. Very convenient for them, but the salary cap does not exist in the playoffs. The stars don't often align for a situation as so, but sometimes they do. in the case of the 2021 Tampa Bay Lightning and the 2015 Chicago Blackhawks. Let's say you suffered an injury to a player making $5 million on the first day of the season. And that player's expected to miss 2 months. You can replace that player's salary entirely, so you can exceed the cap by $5 million. You can go out and sign a free agent for $5 million to replace that player who just got injured. But the problem is that when the player that got injured comes back, you need to be cap compliant. So if you signed someone to take that other guy's place for the same amount of money, now you're kind of stuck. But if that player were to get hurt conveniently in and around the trade deadline and the stars aligned, like I said, you wouldn't have to worry about that because the salary cap doesn't exist come playoff time. The Tampa Bay Lightning are more than likely going to win their second consecutive Stanley Cup this playoffs, and everyone's going to be mesmerized by it. Oh my God, Pittsburgh and now Tampa Bay win back-to-back Stanley Cups in the last decade. The NHL are turning into dynasties, and everyone's going to be, well, how did they do it? How did they do it? This player played really well. No, they had $9.5 million more on the ice than the other team. So what am I saying? What do I want to happen here? I am not saying to purposely put Frederik Andersen on LTIR and prevent him from playing games. I said that last year when Cody Ceci broke his ankle, but Frederik Andersen is not Cody Ceci. What would be better for the team? Frederik Andersen continues to play injured and doesn't fully recover from this injury, and they don't have any cap space, so they can't make any upgrades at the trade deadline, and then they go into the playoffs with no upgrades and still an injured Frederik Andersen. Or they put him on LTIR in and around the time of the trade deadline, and they have all the cap space in the world to go out there and make upgrades, and he comes back cold for Game 1, Round 1. Sitting here editing the video, and the Toronto Maple Leafs have already proven that they can beat the majority of the teams in Canada without having consistent goaltending. So whether Frederik Andersen comes back cold or not, I don't think it's really going to matter, because remember, Round 1 is going to be against another Canadian team. And like I already pointed out, the alternative to him being cold is him still being injured, so at least he'll be cold and healthy. Something has to give. Something different needs to happen here. But I'll say it again because I got so many comments on the last Andersen video. The sample is not from the last month or two. It's from the last 2 seasons. Maybe they use a portion of the relief and cap space they get by placing him on LTIR to go out and get another goalie. So now you got another goalie, and you have Andersen for the playoffs, and you have Campbell. That's a hell of a 1-2-3 combination, and I'm feeling a lot better than what I would having an injured Frederik Andersen, a so-so Jack Campbell, and Michael Hutchison. Plus another top 4 defenseman, plus another top 6 forward, maybe even both, with the other bit of cap space that they would have by doing this. If he's healthy, he's healthy. But if he's injured, why is he still playing games? Why? Because it's not that they don't have anyone else. What? You're telling me that the Detroit Red Wings and the Buffalo Sabres really care who they have playing in net for them when they are actively trying to lose? You're really telling me that they care who is in net for them in a year where saving money, where everyone else is losing it, is the number one priority for most of these teams at the trade deadline? You're telling me that the Maple Leafs couldn't have possibly acquired Jonathan Bernier or Linus Ullmark before he got injured for like a second-round pick and Michael Hutchison? They really care, those 2 teams that are actively trying to lose. What is going on? What is going on? Because behind door number 1, door number 2, or door number 3, there's just question marks behind all of them. And Kyle Dubas had that press conference the other day. He answered a lot of questions, but he said nothing about the goaltending. He said nothing about it. Frederik Andersen talked about the injury today. Kyle, what the hell is going on? Like, this is really just the video of me talking out a chain of thoughts that I'm having. I read the quote. I looked at the context. I looked at the numbers. I looked at the context again. I looked at the numbers again. I looked at different situations. I'm confused. I'm confused. I don't know what's going on. I guess we're just going to have to wait and see. I don't know. Like the video if you did like it, and subscribe for more because more is always on the way. And guys, remember, none of this makes sense.